And welcome everybody to another episode of the Pulse of Fins Nation. I'm your host, Louis Sung, and joining me is my co-host, Ron Caniff. We've got some stuff to talk about here, folks. It's been a week, and already there are things that are they're all over the place. We've got false narratives to debunk. We've got discussions to be had. We've got players that have been added. We're going to squeeze as much as we can into 1 hour. But before we get into any of that, just want to go ahead and mention that our sponsors, as always, is PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each. It's up to you. All you have to do is choose the over or the under on those individual players' fantasy projections, whether that's individual stats or the classic fantasy point projections. They'll give you free squares. And today, by the way, was Taco Tuesday. And I went ahead and put in 5 different bets for each taco that came out. So every taco had to be on a separate thing. But you know what? I have a really good feeling about a lot of those. So you can go ahead and go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will give you up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up and deposit up to $100. So anything up to $100, they will match your deposit. And by the way, if you're not going to take advantage of Taco Tuesday, make sure you jump on to Flex Friday, where you can get your money back up to $20 if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win if you manage to get all 6. So again, promo code 5, FIVE, go to prizepicks.com, use that promo code, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Now, Ron, I know that you're not much of a prize picker, but
no, man.
Maybe you should consider it when the NFL kicks back into gear, because there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of players going from place to place. Maybe all of a sudden, instead of picking the under on Mike Gesicki all the time, maybe now we're going to end up picking the over on Mike Gesicki. Because do you think Mac Jones will be able to make more use out of Mike Gesicki? Oh, by the way, everybody, Mike Gesicki is a New England Patriot now. So, yeah, that's fun.
Mike Gesicki will go the way of Mike Gesicki when Ryan Fitzpatrick was the quarterback. And think about it. We went from a situation where Mike Gesicki and Devontae Parker were the best receivers we had. They were the best Miami had to offer, to a point where if those guys were still on the team, Gesicki is really tight end 2. I mean, honestly, he was tight end 2 last year. And that's not an exaggeration. He really was tight end 2 last year. He was actually tight end 2 officially the year before, by the way. People didn't notice that. But Smythe was actually officially tight end 1, even when Flores was there. And Parker, guy, maybe he might be the 5th best receiver. So now he's going to go to a team where they're kind of like the best receivers again. And I thank you, by the way, for telling me on your show, Fins Nation, that Devontae Parker didn't actually retire, because I thought he had as well. Didn't know that.
No, that was my mistake. I was the one who initially told you that he had retired. I got that
2 mornings ago. But you made the mistake, then corrected it for me. So I think it's a possibility that he'll see more production, only because they just kind of have to force it, because that's who they've signed, and then they've traded for Parker, and those guys who, like I said, are tight end number 2 and wide receiver number 5, if they were on Miami right now, are going to be the main people on New England, which is just one more reason why New England isn't really a team to be feared, especially offensively anymore.
Yeah, so again, the fact that New England Patriots are picking up Miami scraps for their offense, their main offense, I imagine that they just traded Jonnu Smith, so I guess that Gesicki's there to replace him. But the best that they can do is be acrobatic. Now, another false narrative that's going around the team is the fact that, again, it's always kind of Tua-based, isn't it? Everything seems to revolve around the world of Tua Tagovailoa. It's just Tua Tagovailoa's world, and we're just living in it, I guess. But
it's Tua Tagovailoa's hater world.
It's his nightmare.
And we're trying to manage our way. The people who actually have a real sense of what true football is and what good football looks like and what good quarterbacking looks like are just trying to manage our way through the noise and nonsense of the people who are fewer than the people who like Tua, but unfortunately the loudest.
Yeah, and this is the other thing here, as I'm looking up the I'm looking up the information because here's where the narrative kicked back into gear against Tua, right? So as everybody knows by now, Trent Sherfield went ahead and he is now a Buffalo Bill. He signed a 1-year deal to be with the Buffalo Bills, and one of the things that he said, and I'm fully convinced that this was completely taken out of context. I'm just looking for the original tweet that got everything all triggered up like that. But essentially, Trent Sherfield said in a nutshell that if you want to become an elite quarterback, you have to if you want to be an elite wide receiver, you go play with an elite quarterback. So now that was taken as a shot against Tua because, I guess that just means that Trent Sherfield doesn't like playing with Tua and he thought Tua wasn't an elite quarterback. So, and all the memes started. There's pictures of a red-eyed Trent Sherfield, like he's a devil, and that Trent Sherfield is like turning on Tua, he's attacking Tua, sliding Tua. All he really said, and by the way, Trent Sherfield wanted to come back to Miami. He even said, there was another reporter that came out and said that Sherfield thought he was going to go back to the Miami Dolphins, but the Dolphins closed the door on him, so he focused on other teams. And of course,
Miami's looking to do other things this year. We'll talk about it in a bit, but they're definitely looking to make a little change in their offense.
Right. And so the change is that they're trying to make it so that there's not so much of an emphasis on blocking or installing an offense. The offense is installed. Tyreek and Jalen Waddle know what they're doing now. So now they're switching out guys like Sherfield and trying to replace them with, I guess, Braxton Berrios, former New York Jet and UM star, which should make very, very many UM alums people very happy. But with that being said, I really believe that they're trying to put emphasis back on Cedric Wilson because, again, they did not pay him to sit there and do nothing. I'm sure that they're looking at Cedric Wilson and saying, we know you can still play. This is going to be the year where you actually get the chance to play. So now with that being said, the discussion was, did Trent Sherfield actually call out Tua by saying that Josh Allen was an elite quarterback? Is there anybody disputing the fact that Josh Allen is an elite quarterback? He is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Is anybody denying that? I don't think anybody really is denying that. So saying that Josh Allen is an elite quarterback is not a slight on Tua. And this is kind of, I get echoes of when Tyreek joined the Dolphins, right? Remember when Tyreek came out and said that Tua is the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, which, by the way, it was kind of,
which I think he proved.
To some extent. Yes, I believe that he proved it. So if Tyreek Hill comes out and says that Tua is the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, and instantly everybody came out and said Tyreek is talking out of his butt, right? He's lying. He's trying to hype up.
People said that he was taking a shot at Mahomes. Remember? Right. Because you compliment the quarterback that you're with now, the new quarterback, that means you're automatically taking a shot at your old quarterback. It's the same thing.
Right. It's the same exact thing. So now here's Trent Sherfield. He's playing with Josh Allen. He couldn't pass up the opportunity to play with Buffalo because Buffalo had Josh Allen on it. And Josh Allen, yes, will probably make him look pretty good because he's an elite quarterback who can run around the field like a crazy person and extend plays. Again, that's not Tua's game. Tua's game is very much pocket passer, find the accurate guy open in the middle of the field, boom, hit him, done. That's his game. That's not Josh Allen's game. Josh Allen is much more of a scramble drill kind of quarterback. He'll run around. So, and yes, I see Chris Duke is in the chat here. Tua talk. Yes, we're having Tua talk because this is the whole thing. The false narrative surrounding the team. It's all about Tua again. So, by the way, thank you, Duke, for coming on. Speaking of Cedric Wilson, because we brought him up, Thomas White asked, do you all fully expect Cedric Wilson to be someone who can contribute this season? Yes, absolutely.
I'll be honest with you, because I know you've been talking about it. As I saw, I don't know if you want to find my tweet. As I tweeted a couple days ago, I personally believe the Dolphins are making a mistake not signing Trent Sherfield and switching over to Berrios. I get what they're doing. They want more yak. They want a little bit more speed. When Tyreek and Waddle aren't on the field, they like to maybe try and run some of the same stuff. So I guess they're going to now try and get Cedric Wilson into the game. Yeah, there you go. And they're going to try and, use Berrios, etc. I think they're going to miss what Trent Sherfield provided them. He was clutch when he needed to be. I know he had some drops. Yeah, people are going to complain about Trent Sherfield drops. Like Waddle had some drops, man. That playoff game, like let's not even get into it with the drops. So everybody has some drops sometimes. Even Tyreek had a couple drops that you're like, it's just going to happen. But I just thought that the intangibles he brought on the field were important as a wide receiver 3 or 4. He was wide receiver 3. Cedric Wilson didn't get on the field not only because Cedric Wilson clearly was struggling to become part of the offense. He didn't get on the field because Trent Sherfield came on and was simply outplayed him, was better than he was. So now all of a sudden we're going to turn it back over to Cedric Wilson and just assume he can be the guy. And then I know that people want Eazy-E. I know that everybody, like if you pull up some of those comments eventually there from under that tweet, you'll see a ton of people, easy. Yeah, but another guy that couldn't even get on the field. And I just feel like they're going to miss what they had with Trent Sherfield. I just feel like they're going to miss it, man. I just feel like he was there when he needed to be. He wasn't a guy screaming for catches. He's a fantastic blocker, which on a team that struggled blocking even on the offensive line, you kind of need that when you want to run the ball more. I think they're going to miss it, honestly. I think it's going to end up being a mistake. Now, making a mistake with your wide receiver 3 isn't the worst thing to happen. I mean, we did it already because with Cedric Wilson last year, right? We thought he'd be our wide receiver 2, then we thought he would be our wide receiver 3, and the guy couldn't even be our wide receiver 5.
Well, I'm going to give my thoughts on that.
I just think in the end we're going to look at the season when we review 23 and say, yeah, we should have kept Sherfield around. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. Hope I'm wrong, obviously, because we've already made the decision. But I think that's what it's going to come to.
Well, I feel like that we're kind of not giving Cedric Wilson enough credit here because let's keep in mind.
Credit for what? Paying him millions of dollars so he can do this?
Okay, but here's
catch the ball and walk off the field.
Okay, but here's the thing.
The guy did.
Because here's the thing, though. It's not just that Trent Sherfield played well when he was given the opportunity. It's also the fact that Cedric Wilson was injured at first. We heard the reports.
But even when Cedric Wilson wasn't injured, he couldn't figure out how to get himself on the field.
But that's it. But here's the thing. Here's the game you have to play now. When do you do this thing where you mess with a good thing, right? So Cedric Wilson starts out injured. So Trent Sherfield has to step up and play in that role instead. Trent Sherfield does a good job. Trent Sherfield plays well. Trent Sherfield does fantastic. Okay. Is the difference between Cedric Wilson and Trent Sherfield so drastic that you are willing to uproot a player who is doing well to try to insert your someone else into the third wide receiver slot? Now, if it was a superstar player like an Odell Beckham Jr. who had gotten hurt, or a Tyreek Hill who had gotten hurt and came back, then yes, you obviously remove the guy who's playing beforehand, or at least shift him lower down the depth chart and you uproot the other guy instead. But as you alluded to, that was wide receiver 3. And Trent Sherfield was not playing badly. He was playing very well, given the opportunities that he was given. So why would you, even if Cedric Wilson was healthy, fully healthy at the time, why would you uproot Trent Sherfield, who is playing well, to try to insert Cedric Wilson when you already have somebody who's doing the job well? And it's not like you're going to go 4 wide on every single snap so you can get both Sherfield and Wilson on the field at the same time. They had already made their offense and adapted to the part where Trent Sherfield's existence on that field made it so that they were going to be using it as a blocker. He would run some routes sometimes. He would always give me my money on Prize Picks. Thank you, Trent. I'll always be grateful for that because you always hit the over on your yards just with one catch. But the simple fact of the matter is comes a point where you don't mess with a good thing. And the good thing was Sherfield was doing a great job. Now, we have the offseason has come. Trent Sherfield has moved on. Cedric Wilson's going to be healthy. So now we get to start over from scratch. So Cedric Wilson is going to come back in. And again, he played well with the Cowboys. It's not like he was a scrub. He wasn't like a bad player. He was somebody that even now there were still reports that the Cowboys wish they hadn't let Cedric Wilson go. So there has to be something there. They still wanted him back to some extent. And
here's my thought on it, honestly. Like you said, why remove a player who's playing better just to insert another player who you paid more, or was the plan, what have you? But now they're doing that. And probably the big reason they're doing that is now if Sherfield's more expensive, they probably tried to move Cedric Wilson and couldn't for whatever. Maybe they couldn't get the compensation they felt was fair. Maybe they couldn't get any compensation. I don't know. I think they possibly tried to move Cedric Wilson, see if they had any takers at a compensation they felt would work. And when they didn't, there was only so much money they were willing to spend on Sherfield, and he could get more than that elsewhere, so he chose to do so. My guess is if they could have found a taker on Cedric Wilson, Sherfield would probably be here right now. So because of that, I feel like they downgraded. Now, do I have inside knowledge of any of that? No. It's just my opinion on it. And I think in the end, probably isn't going to end up being the right decision. I think McDaniel will figure out how to use the weapons he has in general, but not always. If a guy doesn't fit, Mike Gesicki. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I'm questioning Cedric Wilson's fit in this offense. Yes, we saw him do some things in the playoff game. So that's encouraging, but not necessarily everything. I also remember seeing, I think it was Albert Wilson after he'd gotten hurt and then came back. And then that last game against New England, dude, the guy had like 11 or 12 catches. And we all thought, oh, the next year he's going to be fire. He didn't even make the team. So, you know what I mean? So we've seen that before where a guy kind of goes ham one game at the end and we think that's just automatically going to continue. Sometimes it's just specific to the game plan or specific to the defense, what have you, that you're playing. I think they downgraded, and I think it's mostly because they probably couldn't move off from Cedric Wilson. And so the cap dictated that this was the move they had to make. They had to move on from Trent Sherfield. Unfortunately, I think he's going to be missed. Do I think we're not a good team now? No. I mean, we're talking about wide receiver 3 or 4. How awesome is it when what we're nitpicking on is wide receiver 3 or 4, right? So I'm happy about that. I just think we're going to miss Sherfield.
The reason I don't think we're going to miss him as much as I think we are is because I haven't given time to reflect. I thought Trent Sherfield was a big part of this offense too, but I don't think he's going to be so drastic. It's going to be so drastically different without him. Now, the thing that, and I'm going to highlight here because Alfredo he was in the chat, he was talking about it. He can't wait till Trent Sherfield and Mike Gesicki sees what New York State taxes are like. Obviously, nobody wanted either. So that's the thing. If Trent Sherfield was so special and he was getting so much consideration from other teams, why did he only take a 1-year deal? Which, quite frankly, let me just look up the numbers here because I don't think the deal was all that drastic.
Well, how do we know that he wasn't offered? He was offered a 2-year deal or more money anywhere else. We don't know that. This might have been the best we could offer. They could offer. I mean, maybe Miami was only offering a 1-year deal as well, but for less money, likely for considerably less money, enough that even the taxes, the state tax, wasn't enough to make up the difference. I'm not sure, but I think he's going to be missed. I mean, that's just my opinion. I know that most people don't agree with that. They think that we've upgraded, and I'd be honest with you, man.
Well, I wouldn't call Braxton Berrios an upgrade.
We upgraded at offensive line when we signed Feeney, and we upgraded with Berrios. Dude, when we're signing New York Jets offensive scraps from an offense that was like dog shit awful last year, that doesn't get me excited. I don't feel those are upgrades. That's just my opinion. Yes, with Berrios, we finally have a punt returner because we really didn't have one last year, and we don't want to put Waddle out there. We don't want to put Tyreek out there. I get that. So now we have a guy that, hate to say it, kind of expendable. We don't mind using wide receiver 3 or 4 to return some kickoffs and punts, and that's cool. But I don't feel like these are upgrades when we're grabbing the New York Jets scraps from last year. As bad as an offense as they were. I mean, you got New England grabbing Miami scraps. Now, scraps from Miami in our offense, I mean, that could be something. Like I said, these are going to be like their main targets. But for us, they're just guys.
But I don't think that – I wouldn't call Braxton Berrios an upgrade unless you're basically –
people are saying he's an upgrade from Sherfield.
Where?
I'm saying you smoke. You smoke crack. Because he's not an upgrade, period, in the story. He may do some different things in Sherfield. He is not going to be overall an upgrade, not to me.
Okay, so I'm going to go into some of those tweets that you got regarding your thing. I'm guessing these are the kind of the people that you're talking about here. So it was Matthias who said that he's less of a loss than Gesicki, referring to Trent Sherfield. So
that's Weck. He's in our OnlyFans. He's our moderator in the OnlyFans.
Oh, well, he's wrong, so... If I end up, if I end up in the gulag,
he's probably watching right now. Actually,
fine, he's gonna watch. He already doesn't. He only watches because of you anyway. So, but I digress.
Oh, you think he doesn't like you? You need to go into OnlyFans and OnlyFans. Damn it, I say it every time.
No, I know he doesn't. I know he doesn't like me. I know he doesn't like me. I know he doesn't like me, but that's fine. My world is on the Twitterverse anyway. But anyway, I disagree with him because to say that he's less of a loss than Gesicki, like you can't agree with that. I know you don't agree with that. There's no way you agree with him on that.
No, as you can see right underneath.
Yeah, right underneath. You're telling him he's way off.
Way off, man. Yeah, way off. He's not less of a loss than Gesicki. He's way more of a loss. Gesicki's the one who's not a loss because even the offense that we got from Gesicki had to be manufactured. It had to be forced in there. He was, as I had said in OnlyFans and probably a few times on Twitter too, last season in June or July, Gesicki was not a fit for this offense. It was not going to work. They were going to try it out for a one-year deal. That's why they just franchise tagged him. It's like, we'll give this a shot, see if we can make this work. He just doesn't work, man. He's a smallish tight end who can't block, but too slow of a wide receiver to really, play a wide receiver 3 or the slot. And he doesn't get much separation. He's tough, man. Even though he has an amazing catching ability, like extremely, he's an extremely good athlete. Like he's an amazing athlete. And I don't want to sit there and say he's an amazing athlete, but not a good football player. I don't want to say that. I would just say he just doesn't do anything exceptional at either spot to where it really works. Yes, it works if you're trying to make him the primary target all day, every day, and you're just trying to get the ball to Gesicki. But if you are, your offense probably isn't very strong in general, a la Miami Dolphins offense 2019, 2020, right? 2021, when that's what we were doing. We were trying to force the ball to a couple guys that who could go up and get it some, but didn't really get great separation. It didn't really do anything super spectacular. And when those are your main guys and you're trying to force it to those guys, yes, they're going to get more numbers than he got last year. No, your offense in general is probably not going to be very dynamic, which we saw. So that's just my opinion on it.
And Alfredo says the upgrade to Sherfield is the guy they signed to be wide receiver too. So yeah, that's Cedric Wilson.
Yeah, I guess. Couldn't get on the field though, Alf. He couldn't get on the field. I understand he had injuries, but he got outplayed by Sherfield. And now we're going to just say,
but how do you? Okay, but Ron,
who got outplayed by.
But here's Ron. But here's where I have this issue here. How can you say that Sherfield outplayed him when Cedric Wilson didn't play? That's just it.
Because he couldn't even get on the field, man. If you're not ready, you're not ready. Just like
but he
couldn't get on the field.
Sherfield had already established himself. Again, why? It's the same. It's the same argument that
established himself because he was better. That's why he
established himself because he was playing well and the offense was humming. There was no reason to uproot. You don't mess with a good thing.
And then we just did it.
But
right?
That was after the season was over.
Thing. Now we just what does the new season? What difference does the new season make?
The fact that you get to reevaluate and reassess everything that's going on. Now you get to make adjustments that you can actually install, not week to week. Because
but we've already made the decision. So what evaluation are you doing? You've already decided based off what you saw last year, even though Sherfield outplayed Cedric Wilson, you've already decided that you're moving from Sheffield. I'm telling you, man, for me, I think this decision was cap driven because they couldn't move Cedric Wilson. Not saying Cedric Wilson's bad, and I guess they'll find a way to make it work. And I really hope they get Easy in because we didn't draft a guard slash tackle slash does everything in Green Bay on the offensive line, Zach Tom. Instead, we drafted another wide receiver when we had signed 2 and had Waddle. So I really hope he gets on the field too and we see something there. Remember that Trent snaps began with Cedric ribs broke, but Cedric wasn't doing anything, man. What game? I don't know. What game or what week?
Wait. Hold on.
Wilson get hurt.
Hold on. Wait. Hold on. Cedric wasn't doing anything. Okay, but you could argue that Trent Sherfield wasn't doing a whole lot either because where were all the targets going, Ron? Almost all of them.
Waddle and Hill, obviously.
Right. So what's the difference? It's like he's saying Cedric Wilson wasn't doing anything. Was Tua supposed to take away targets from his main guys to give it to this other guy.
Sherfield found a way to get his with Tyreek and Waddle on the field.
Okay, well, hold on. No. Now I want to look this up because I want to look at his numbers because I want to see exactly what numbers we're talking about. Like, I get that he made my prize picks very happy, but the problem is that
here's the thing, though. The part of the reason why Sherfield was able to get and then stay on the field was he did other things very well besides just go get the ball. Cedric Wilson doesn't. So you're missing something now. Is Cedric Wilson going to replace the just pure production of Trent Sherfield on numbers only? Yeah, probably. For what we pay him, I certainly hope so. But is he gonna replace Sherfield as a whole? Nah, he's not. And I think that's what we're gonna miss.
I don't know if we're gonna miss it that much. Okay, how about this? How about this? Think about this.
We'll agree to disagree, and maybe we move on because we talked 26 minutes about wide receiver 3 or 4. So maybe we move on to a different.
But he's the one who triggered this whole discussion, right?
It's true.
This is the false.
Oh, yeah, did we even really get to talk about Sherfield's comments because we kind of started to.
No, we did, but I mean it's the same. But it's the same thing, though. It's like
I wanted to make a point though about that.
You were saying that people were saying, oh well, he's not going to be that big a loss. He can go kick rocks because of what he's saying.
I want to make just a different point, kind of changing the subject, but not really. We're still on Sherfield, but we're going to talk about the comments about supposedly. Where he said, well, if you want to be an elite wide receiver, you go play with an elite quarterback. And this was a dog at Tua. So think about it. Just kind of make it make sense for a minute. Sherfield obviously knew he was wide receiver 3 or 4 here. He got his, he got his opportunity. He got to play on the field. Tua didn't miss him, right? He didn't miss him physically as far as accuracy goes. So he benefited from playing with Tua. He benefited from playing with that offense. He wanted to stay in Miami. We all know that was clear. And he just didn't get to because the team decided to move on. Tua is not the one that said, I don't like this guy, get him out of here. So considering all that, Sherfield had a good opportunity. He played well. And he, and he wanted to be here. He wanted to be here. Now, all of a sudden, he goes to Buffalo and he's going to take some cheap shot at Tua? Clearly, it didn't happen. Clearly, those comments were taken out of context. I don't know what the context was because I looked for it all last night, couldn't find the full thing. And I was too busy today to look for it. So I'd love to see what the entire paragraph was, what have you.
But
I would
find it for us
somewhere in the realm of when he's talking about an elite quarterback, he is probably referring to Josh Allen and Tua, both of them, not just Josh Allen. That would be my guess, but I don't know, maybe somebody who saw the entire quote. We live in a world where people don't read an entire quote. People retweet an article and just read the headline.
No, people will literally
say, check this out, and then you read the article, and then everything that headline was a bunch of crap. So people retweet one sentence of an entire paragraph and just take that as gospel and move on about their day and don't dig deeper. So in a world where that happens all the time, we should dig deeper once in a while to try and find, okay, what did he actually say? Because it certainly doesn't make sense to me, considering he wanted to be back in Miami, that he would suddenly take some cheap shot at Tua. I'm sure that did not happen.
And then here's the tweet that Tyreek Hill himself basically came out and defended his former teammate now, Trent Sherfield, because, well, I don't know if it's defending or more so as debunking what the other guy here said, because it was Matt Perino who initially made that. So that's the original tweet right there. Trent Sherfield on his decision to come to Buffalo and play for the Bills. If you want to be an elite wide receiver, you can and play with an elite quarterback. And Tyreek comes out and says that he didn't say that exactly.
I believe even Matt Perino quote tweeted himself and said that Sherfield was not taking a shot at Tua, and Trent Sherfield then retweeted that quote tweet that he was not taking a shot at Tua. So much to do about nothing. As much as the loud Tua haters want to try and turn this into something, I promise you, I think all the questions were answered in regards to Tua's talent last year. I think what wasn't answered, or maybe was, but in an unfortunate way, was can Tua stay on the field? That's a conversation, obviously, we had last week. You know my opinion on what the Dolphins' plan
Well,
is.
Dolphins Twitter went ballistic on this guy. I'll say that. That's for sure.
I'm sorry, say that again.
No, Trent. Dolphins Twitter went ballistic on this guy. Here's a
there it is. That's where this wasn't a shot at Tua, FYI. This was the tweet right here. This wasn't a shot at Tua one. That Sherfield, if you go to his Twitter page, he retweeted that quote tweet. So that was him saying, hey, this was not a shot at Tua. He wanted to return to Miami. So he retweeted somebody saying he wanted to return to Miami. That means he wanted to return to Miami. You don't then turn around and take a shot at your quarterback, and he didn't. So for me, case closed, Tua haters.
Yeah, but you know how it's always going to be. There's always going to be something that says, you see, it's proof Josh Allen is better, and now Aaron Rodgers is coming.
I'm not going to sit here and say that Josh Allen isn't better than Tua.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that at the beginning of last year, we felt like that gap was here, and I'd say that gap kind of got more like here. If Josh Allen is a top 5 quarterback, then Tua is probably a top 7 or 8. I think that puts him close to elite. Tua's elite if he could stay on the field. I know that sounds weird. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's not even accurate. But for me, Tua's elite if he could stay on the field and play.
That doesn't sound weird to me at all. We literally had a show where we talked about how Tua was officially an elite quarterback in my mind. Like he had done everything he needed to do to prove that he was an elite quarterback.
Absolutely.
His offense was on fire, and
he's not an elite athlete. So you've got some people out there who are elite athletes playing quarterback extremely well. I think Josh Allen's probably falls into that. An elite athlete, an elite football player who plays the position of quarterback at an extremely high level, and that combination makes him an elite quarterback.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson.
Tua is not an elite athlete. I mean, let's be honest, he's just not. But he certainly is an elite quarterback based off what a quarterback is supposed to do, and that's sit in the pocket and deliver the ball, deliver accurate strikes with anticipation, read defense, watch the defense, not your receivers, throw to a spot, throw with timing. He's just fantastic at that, and we can see the difference when not. And I know we had a huge gap in our backups compared to Tua, but most teams with really good quarterbacks have a huge gap in there from the starter to the backup. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. But he is elite in many ways, but it's not going to show it in his athleticism. I mean, he's more athletic than me and you, man. It is an NFL football
Are you
player.
kidding?
Trust me, if he was standing right here, he would be probably mean mugging me about what I'm saying, looking very intimidating, and I'd be crapping my pants. You know what I'm saying? Like he's a football player. He's an NFL football player, but
you know why?
He's not athletic like a Josh Allen or somebody like that.
He would never glare at you with an intimidating glare. He's not that kind of person.
That's true. That's true.
But so one of the things that Aaron Anders is bringing up, y'all buying Aaron Rodgers viewed the Dolphins as the number 1 over the Jets. I would buy that. You know why I would buy that? Because who wants to retire in New York, man? I would rather retire in Miami, South Beach, man. The sun.
Did Aaron Rodgers say that or something? Or
apparently there may have been a news story that Aaron Rodgers wanted to come to the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, if Tua hadn't worked out, I'm sure we would have made some.
Yeah, there was some news that came out that said Aaron Rodgers wanted to come to the Dolphins, but it feels like everybody keeps saying that everybody wanted to go to the Dolphins.
Yeah, everybody likes
every quarterback on planet Earth wants to come to Miami.
Well, if you think about it, you think about, like, for instance, we hear about Mike White. Oh, Mike White, he loves Miami. He loves Miami. He wants to be in Miami.
He's a hometown boy.
Think about it. Being the backup to Tua right now that's like the best backup quarterback job you can freaking have, unless you're somebody who doesn't really want to play.
Teddy.
But if you're somebody who's looking to go to the next level in your career, for almost a fact, you're going to get somewhere in the 2 to 4 game range on the light end to play with two or three of some of the best athletes in the NFL or best receivers in the NFL in a Mike McDaniel offense that's humming with all that speed. Of course, Mike White wanted to come here because he knows he's going to get an opportunity to shine in a really good offense with really good talent. There is no better place to be for a QB2 if you're a QB2 looking to move forward in your career and not just looking to sit on the bench, hold a clipboard and be a cheerleader like our last QB2.
Well, beyond all that, also Mike White is a South Florida native, and he actually grew up as a Dolphins fan. So
yeah, I understand that. But if the Dolphins were trash, he might have wanted to go somewhere else, right? If it was the Dolphins of Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki,
but he was
Flores,
still coming to be a backup.
I don't know if he wants to come be the backup. Maybe he tried to be a starter, but not the backup.
I don't know, man. I feel like if it were me. And again, I'm not a football player, but if it were me, if I had the opportunity to come to my hometown team, I would be like,
"You're not a football player, Lewis."
Nah, you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell by the fact that I look like the nerdiest nerd to ever nerd.
You could be a nerd and play football.
Not these days. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, you're kidding me, man. The guy I work with, this huge, bulked up dude, played football for years in high school. Actually played against Travis Kelce back in the day. And that guy, all he talks about is his Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments.
Really?
Yeah, I'm playing Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. So you'd be surprised the mixture of football player and nerd that you get these days.
I retract my previous statement.
It's a different time, Lewis. It's a different time. Not too late for you to make it in the NFL.
Well, I'm almost 30. I think
you're done.
I think my playing days.
I'm pretty sure I'm done.
I'm done.
I'd walk in automatically being the oldest guy and probably the slowest guy in the NFL.
All right. So our good friend Duke wants us to talk about Jerome Baker. Well, there is a narrative that we can
Duke always wants to talk about like linebackers and linemen. Like, Duke, I don't know nothing.
That's what he's good at. He likes,
man. I talk about quarterback and wide receivers. You start getting into Duke conversation. I just got to shut up and listen.
Okay. So here's the thing, though. Here's the crazy thing. So Jerome Baker, the funny thing with Jerome Baker is that there is a false narrative a little bit with him, right? And the narrative is that Jerome Baker is a trash linebacker. And I really feel like that's not true.
Yeah, that's not true.
The biggest issue with Jerome Baker, and it's something that I actually looked up here, is that there's a lot of there was a tweet that Hussam Patel had put up not too long ago.
Is he going to break into our show today?
No, I don't think he's watching. I don't think he's watching today, so he's not going to be breaking in. No, so if he were watching, he might decide to come into this discussion. But it was Hussam who had said that. I guess it was a list that I can't read anymore. I guess the tweet disappeared. But the thing is that, and this is very true, is that Jerome Baker was asked to do a lot on defense. Like, he was asked to do a lot of things that he's not necessarily built to do. And Alfredo has talked about this too when he's been on the show as well. Jerome Baker is a very good blitzing linebacker, but you don't necessarily want him chasing running backs and tight ends around. And so now that he's going to get the opportunity to do more of what he's good at, I would assume with David Long Jr. coming into the mix, we might just see a revitalization of what Jerome Baker is capable of. We might get a reminder that maybe this guy is not the terrible linebacker that we've been.
What made him good and why we gave him that last extension to begin with. I like Baker. I think he'll be. I mean, you think about it right now. If we're to, do you know what force ranking is, Lewis?
Force ranking, is that how apt you are to the force? That would mean Yoda's number one.
Not like force ranking. No, force ranking is when you got in work. It's like you got 10 employees, right? And regardless of how good each one is or bad each one is, there's still a number 10 and there's still a number 1, right? There's still a best and there's still a worst. So if we were to force rank Miami Dolphins starting defense, and it doesn't mean that the number 11 guy is trash. I mean, if you think about it, you got, I don't know, this would be a fun exercise. So who's like the best defensive, like probably Jalen Ramsey, right?
The best player on the Miami
Probably
Dolphins
now,
defense.
right? As of right now, probably Ramsey is our number 1 player.
He's definitely the most. He definitely got the best reputation.
Yeah, I'd say he's number 1, and then maybe X is number 2. I don't know. I kind of think Phillips is number 2 now, but that's just me.
You would have to argue Bradley Chubb.
All right, okay, Chubb, Phillips, X,
Christian
right?
Wilkins,
Wilkins, maybe even Sealer. We forgot to put Long in there. We probably should have had Long above Sealer and Wilkins, right?
I wouldn't put David Long above Christian Wilkins.
I mean, Holland's up there somewhere. It's really tough, right? It's tough to put that 1 through 11. When you're talking about Jerome Baker being, I don't know, 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever, best defensive starter on our team, I think most teams in the NFL would take that.
I mean,
that's what we're talking about. We're arguing about what they call like the variables, right? Like the people at the bottom. With Jerome Baker is one of your bottom defensive starters, man, I promise you, if you go to most other teams' bottom 2, 3 defensive starters, they ain't as good as Jerome Baker, man. So I think we're kind of like back into where I was obsessing about wide receiver 3, 4, right? Like if we're obsessing about Jerome Baker and Sherfield, and these are the complaints we have, and I know we have complained about not having right tackle, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, there's a narrative there.
I think we're doing okay.
There's a narrative.
We can talk about right tackle if you want. I don't know what there is to talk about. Dolphins aren't going to go and make any major signings, I don't think. But
yeah. So now here's one more false narrative that I really want to get past here, okay? And that false narrative is very simply that the Miami Dolphins don't care about the offensive line. This is something that I've alluded to already in the last 3 shows now that I've done for Fins Nation, which is the morning show, if you guys haven't already listened in on it. There is a whole second wave of free agency still to go. There's still the draft to go.
Well, okay. I'm going to stop you right there.
Here we go.
When it comes to the draft and Chris Greer and offensive line.
Hold on. Wait. I'm going to stop you.
I'm going to
stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to stop you now.
I don't want to hear about Chris Greer drafting offensive lineman. He sucks at it. Next state.
Yes, he does have. Yes, Chris Greer has sucked at drafting offensive linemen. However, now Mike McDaniel and his entire entire coaching staff, which is
what happened last
all
year?
Offensive line coaches.
All those people were there. They were staring Zach Tom in the face, and they took
Eric Hinckley. Okay, but that means that Mike
McDaniel.
all
that McDaniel talk and Frank Smith and all these offensive line experts we got. Apparently, we got 8 coaches that have offensive line experience. None of that got through to Greer. Apparently, when it came to passing on a guy, like you needed offensive line. I talked about this all. I was in OnlyFins nonstop till I thought they were gonna kick me out of there. I just finally shut up about it. But I'm gonna get back on it one more time. You needed offensive line help probably worse than any other team in this league except for Cincinnati. The guy was staring you in the face, and you went and drafted Eazy-E after spending $100+ million and 5 picks on Tyreek and bringing on Cedric Wilson. That made less sense to me than anything. But the only thing I can come to is as much as Chris Greer drafts bad offensive linemen, what he does equally is pass on offensive linemen he should have drafted. So that's the deadly combination there. I don't trust him to draft offensive linemen. I don't trust that he'll pick a guy that is the right guy for the team or for the NFL. And I don't trust that he won't just pass up on a guy he should have drafted, because his fingerprint is all over that team. He was the head of college scouting. And I tweeted this out 2 or 3 years ago. The guy was the head of college scouting since 2007. I went through and I looked at Miami Dolphins, their draft history of all offensive line from 2007 all the way at that time. I think it was 2021. This was before McDaniel died. I think it was when he first came onto as the GM, when Chris Greer was first promoted. And I tried to find how many good offensive linemen were drafted on the Miami Dolphins outside of the first round. Because usually, not always, Austin Jackson, you can get the first round right. Like he had Pouncey in there and a couple other guys, right, that were good picks. But from 2007 to 2021, the entire time this guy was the head of college pro scouting, I could only name 3. Samson Satelli, if you can remember that name. Were you still in high school when that guy played, Lewis? I think you were. When did you graduate, Lewis?
I mean, I've lost track of time, man. I'm
When
already
did you
starting to get
graduate?
gray.
When did you graduate? Like
Graduate,
08?
something like that, man. I don't know. But either way, I
Okay.
remember I was very young when Samson Satelli was around.
Yeah, exactly. And then two guys that only played good after they left the team, and it's questionable on one of them. And the other guy was
Billy Turner.
Jerry. God, now I don't remember his name.
John Jerry does not
John
count.
Jerry, right?
Did we draft
go
John
briefly
Jerry?
and play better, and Billy Turner. 14 years. Every other offensive line drafted complete garbage, and then we kept that going, man. We kept that going, and we're still. Then Greer gets a chance to draft in the first round, and he blows that pick. I mean, dude, that guy's fingerprint is all over straight trash, and I love Chris.
What
Greer.
about Robert Hunt?
Robert Hunt was a good one. But that was after the point I made when I did this exercise in 2021. I don't think we might have just drafted Hunt in 20 or 21 when he became the GM. I mean, how can you trust a guy with a track record like that? Honestly, how can you?
Laramie Tunsil.
No, Laramie. Well, first of all, I said outside the first round, Laramie Tunsil, man. I mean, how do you mess that up? You and I would have gotten that pick right.
Okay, but you can't remove the first round picks from this guy's repertoire. Okay,
well, there's only like one good one then. Tunsil, was he even the GM when we drafted Tunsil? I don't think he was.
But you went all the way back from 2007, so when he was the head of college scouting.
Yes, because in the first round, Lewis, right? When you're the GM, which at the time for a long period of that time he was not, the GM's making. He's making a decision on those, and he's done a lot of homework. So whoever the GM was, whether it was Tannenbaum or whoever it was, or Hickey, they are the ones that are doing heavy homework on those picks. Okay. Heavy homework. When you start getting into the second, third, and fourth and fifth round, you are relying greatly on your scouting team.
Okay.
Much more so than in the first round, and he blows it, man. He must have just been feeding them crappy information. Like, I don't know, but it just was terrible. They were terrible picks, man. Pick after pick. Terrible.
Okay, but this is the thing, though.
Lewis, we want people to watch this show. Please do not sit here and try and defend Chris Greer on his offensive line picks.
I am not defending Chris Greer on his offensive line picks. But if you are going to make the distinction to say that you're going all the way back to 2007 to point out that Samson Satelli was a good choice to be picked because he was the one who helped scout him, then I have to look at everything that happened from 2007 and beyond. Samson Satelli, he was a good one. Jake Long was the first overall pick. He was good while he was healthy.
But again, anybody, you and I would have gotten Jake Long right. He was like an all-time. There were a lot of people. If he had stayed healthy, he was a Hall of Famer. The guy was just amazing.
Mike Pouncey was good. Billy Turner was good. Jawan James was good.
Jawan James was first round. But Chris Greer was not the GM for Jawan James. He was not the GM for Mike Pouncey. He was not the GM for Jake Long. Like I said, the GMs do heavy homework on those types of picks. When you're making a first overall pick, I promise you're not reading a scouting report that your head college scout gave you and making a decision based on that. You're doing heavy homework yourself. When you start getting into the lower rounds, you're depending on your scouting team, your head of college scouting, and that's when all the picks seem to go shitty. And that's where Chris Greer was supposedly ahead of. I'm telling you, the guy's terrible at it. He needs to just give that job to somebody else. Well, we have a good O-line coach now, man. We got Butch Berry. Didn't you read the sticky note?
But you know what? Okay, let me try that again because my brain is like all wired up now. Because we're talking about these players like they were all trash. And a lot of these players, even Jamil Douglas. You remember Jamil Douglas?
He was trash.
He was trash. But you know what? He was able to make at least something out of himself after a little while.
Didn't he become a cop? No, that was the other guy.
That was Isaac Asiata.
Yeah, he became a cop.
Okay, so how about this one? Here, let me
Chris Greer is the king of drafting offensive linemen who are the next something else, but not in the NFL. That's what he's good at.
Okay, but what about this though? So let's talk about, because if you're going to bring in all offensive linemen, what about Jake Brendel? You remember Jake Brendel? He was drafted. He was an undrafted free agent for the Cowboys back in 2016. And then he was immediately released by the Cowboys and the Dolphins picked him up. Jake Brendel just signed a contract to come back to the San Francisco 49ers as a starting center. That was a good player. Now, I was actually upset that they let him go ever, but obviously there was something there with him.
Well, that means that not only did we not know that not only did we do a poor job in the evaluation of a college player, we did a poor job in the evaluation of a player on our team. But that was a problem for last year, and we talked about that a few times. And I'm not going to blame that one on Greer because you've got a whole coaching staff. It's a concern for me, and we have to figure out who's to blame.
But that's part of my point. When
you go in and you think that these are your 5 offensive linemen, we're going to go. And they were consistent with it. I'll give Miami credit. They said that it was left tackle this, left guard that. Like they were determined it was going to be Armstead, it was going to be Eichenberg, it was going to be Williams, it was going to be Hunt, it was going to be Austin Jackson. And by God, if when the season started that wasn't the 5, they kept him at those spots. They don't believe in cross-training. I'm fine with that. But it's a concern for me that a team evaluates. Now, whether that was Chris Greer forcing these guys because he had drafted them, or that was Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith and Applebaum's telling them, no, I think these are the right starting 5, whatever it is, that you start to lose players from injury, and then suddenly you grab scrap heaps, guys, you pull them off the loading dock of the UPS truck and put them at tackle and at guard, and they outplay the people that you evaluated the entire summer. That is a serious concern for me, and we have to figure out whose fault that was. My guess is that last year and again this year, Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg are being forced down the throat of the coaching staff, and they're just going to have to make it work because Chris Greer has instead spent the money in that. I'm not complaining about you spending the money on Ramsey and Tyreek and grabbing Chubb and these guys. I am not complaining about it. I'm just saying that the offensive line, I'm not saying they don't care about it because that's where we started this conversation, right? It's not that they don't care about it. It's that they no longer have any more big resources besides Armstead to bring in like a high price right tackle. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to spend that money. They're going to want to save some money for sure, save some money to roll over, or my other reason I said they want to save money. I said it last week. I won't say it this week. It makes people mad. But they're going to save some money, and they just don't have – they may pick up another couple guys, but I don't think anybody they pick up is going to instantly satisfy our need. Like, oh, we finally have a right tackle. I think it's just going to be a bunch of dudes fighting for the spot, and left guard too.
There is a whole second wave of free agency that has not even started yet.
Yes,
and there is
none of those guys are going. What I'm saying is, yes, there is a second wave of free agency, and yes.
How do you know that none of these guys that are going to shake loose are going to be the answer to the problem?
None of them are going to satisfy Dolphins' craving for. Man, you should hear CK and OnlyFans. You want to if you're somebody who. Like a lot of people feel like this offensive line, especially at left guard and right tackle, is being ignored, and it's a problem. Man, you need to get in OnlyFans if you're not in it, because CK, that guy is writing. He's giving you a novella every single day in that chat about this offensive line. He's clearly super concerned. I think that the offense was fantastic last year, and the offensive line was crappy. So as long as Tua is there, we can absolutely survive. Yes, people say, yeah, but the offensive line is directly responsible for the health of Tua. However, last year, none of Tua's injuries were because we had bad offensive line play. That wasn't the case. It was some of it was on Tua himself for not holding on to the ball, for holding on to the ball too long, like in the Cincinnati game, right? But it wasn't because the offensive line played bad. Now, a couple years back, 2 years back, when Jesse Davis against Buffalo, and he let, I forget who, come along and break Tua's ribs. That was because of the offensive line. So it can happen. But it wasn't because of the offensive line last year that got Tua hurt. If Tua's back there, the offensive line, we'd love to see it better. But we saw a team go all the way to the Super Bowl with a crappy offensive line, Cincinnati, right? And almost get there again with a crappy offensive line, Cincinnati. So I think Miami will just have to make do. And we'll just have to suck it up and enjoy the fact that we have some immensely fantastic talent in other spots on the team.
All I'm going to say is that a lot of times I feel like, and this is what Duke had brought up, is that the Miami has not had a coach to develop offensive linemen for a long time, and I believe that. Jermaine Illuminor, remember Jermaine Illuminor? He was on. He was on the team, and
I believe you.
The the Raiders had him as a starter. He was on the team in training camp, and we cut him. So there's a lot of times where a player will leave a team and something will just click. If you look back on the offensive line coaches that the Miami Dolphins have had over the course of how many years now? I mean, I'm literally going to pull
so
it
many
up.
offensive coaching changes in general. It's
like, look, I'm going to look it up right now. Okay?
It's an insanely high number.
Yeah.
And by the way, I hope that everybody understands, I'm a huge, huge Chris Grier fan, and I still think he's a top 5 GM in this league. And he has done a phenomenal job with trades, with cap, with free agency, and he's done a great job in the draft. Like we can't doubt it. The Iggy pick, we all know that was Brian Flores. Besides, and Austin Jackson, offensive line. I mean, let's say, as I said before, he's not good at that. But man, he's made a lot of fantastic picks in the draft, and he's done a lot of great moves to make this team better. And this roster is where it is a lot because of Chris Grier. Because remember, we know the story, and this story is directly from Mike McDaniel. So we're not just assuming or guessing. We know that Chris Grier came to Mike McDaniel and said, we might have a really good chance to trade for Tyreek Hill. Mike McDaniel didn't go out and make that happen. He didn't even know it was happening. And then, in fact, Mike McDaniel said, when he's like, okay, I got to get on the phone. I got to sell this to Tyreek Hill. I got to sell it. Man, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And then Tyreek Hill said to Mike, Mike, coach, man, I already said yes. You can put away the sales pitch. Chris Grier made all that happen. He's a phenomenal GM, and I don't want people thinking I don't think Chris Grier isn't a phenomenal GM, because I think he is. The offensive line thing, man, it's just his weakness, and we all have him, right? And that is his. And I don't see, after all these years he's spent in the league, all these years with Miami, since what? He's been with Miami since 2003. Am I right? He was with New England before that. If I have all those years correct, I think he's been with Miami close to 20 years, and he was with New England some years before that. I think might have even been prior to Bill Belichick. I'm not sure. The guy's just not gotten good at that. I don't see where he's going to suddenly get good at drafting offensive line.
Chris Grier has been with the team for at least 23 years now.
Yeah, man. And then he was with New England before that. Guy's been doing this a long time. He's not going to suddenly just it's not going to suddenly click for him. He clearly doesn't know what it is he's supposed to be looking for with offensive line. And at least as of last year, Mike McDaniel coming here didn't make it better because they passed on Zach Tom when he was right there for them, and they needed that position. You know, you're talking about opportunity meeting need, and they pass that up. That's a problem, man. That's a big problem. Imagine what we could have done with Zach Tom last year, at least at left guard.
Mike McDaniel may have looked at the thing and said that, you know what, I want more weapons because I think weapons are the way to look how you want to bring up a point. You just mentioned Joe Burrow making it to the Super Bowl with one of the crappiest offensive line in football history, and yet they made it to the Super Bowl by throwing it to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, having Joe Mixon running the football, having C.J. Uzomah or whatever the guy's name was, a tight end. There were weapons all over the doggone place, and Joe Burrow was able to make it work. Now, people are talking about how Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback. Alfredo Arteaga brings up that Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback, and I believe it.
Elite quarterback,
I believe it.
He is absolutely an elite quarterback.
I believe
more
it.
So to me than even Josh Allen is.
But look at his weapons.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to give Tua any credit because he has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. What does Joe Burrow have? Joe Burrow has weapons coming out his ears, man.
So, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I get your point. The point you're making is maybe Mike McDaniel.
So if Mike McDaniel is loading up on weapons, saying, I want to do what the Bengals did and I'll worry about offensive line later. I mean, I can't argue with the results. The offense was fantastic last year, and that was with the bad offensive line. Any improvement on the O-line now is gravy.
We do realize that as of right now, the projected starting five is the same exact projected starting five as headed into week 1 last year. We are aware that that's the case, right? That's why people are freaking out, and I get it.
I still feel like there's an opportunity for somebody like Kendall Lamb to at least be a stopgap.
I'm glad that we have those guys to compete, but we grabbed them off a scrap heap. And again, if they beat out, now I think here's what I think the difference is. Last year, Miami, Mike McDaniel specifically, and their offensive coaching staff seemed to have it made up pretty much in their mind who that left tackle through right tackle was. As I said, those 5 guys. I think this year, those guys maybe are kind of projected to start, but I don't think minds are made up. I think they're going to let that play out as it will play out, and I think they will move a couple. They're going to let everybody get a shot at left guard and right tackle. If you are not Armstead, Williams, or Hunt, and you're on the Miami Dolphins roster, you are going to get a shot at left guard or right tackle. And there is not going to be any preconceived notion of who that is. But it could still end up being Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson, sadly. And I just think that, do I think right tackle will cost us the Super Bowl if by some chance we're destined to go? Probably not. Do I think they'd be better off to at least try and find somebody to man that spot? If nothing else, I mean, I know that I heard somebody mention, it might have been Simon Clancy mentioned that that Jason Peters is still around.
I brought that guy up. 41 years old.
He's 41 years old,
but he still plays well.
He still plays well, and I guarantee you, probably plays better than Austin Jackson at right tackle. He probably does. Now, have we seen guys come out of nowhere and just start, like you mentioned, just start playing good? Yeah, sure we have, but. I don't know. Are we going to bet? Are we going to bet ourselves on that? Are we going to bet the offensive line on that? I don't know. I still think there's plenty of opportunities for Chris Grier to make a move on the offensive line, one that will move the needle at least a little bit for everybody. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, Terrence Steele's still out there with that.
Do we really want to give him more draft picks?
2nd round pick, 1 or 2 second round pick. Yeah, but you're the one that's talking about drafting an O lineman. He's young, and we already know he's good. He could be the right tackle. We're not guessing. We know he's good in the NFL. We know he plays good tackle. There he is right there. If you're going to spend a 2nd round pick on your right tackle, the only reason that you go ahead and draft somebody and not make that trade is because we've spent a ton of money on a lot of guys, and we just don't have it to spend. It's just more the money thing. And right now, they don't want to hold up whatever that money is for 5 days either, just in case something else shakes loose.
All right. Well, we will see. We will be back here probably next week when more news.
Yeah, man. I feel like I could go another hour, but I don't
we don't want to do that. So
we don't want to be going in circles. It was a good show, though.
I had fun. We haven't gone back and forth like this in a long time.
Yeah, because we usually have other voices. We don't want to stomp all over. We don't mind stomping on each other. We just don't want to stomp on Alf or Chad or whoever might be on.
All right. So, no, we'll stomp on Chad if Chad shows up. All right. For anybody who hasn't gone yet, go to prizepicks.com, use that promo code 5 and get up to $100 matched on your initial deposit when you sign up, because today was Taco Tuesday and I've got so many props lined up right now. I will literally go and I will show all the different props that I have lined up because I've got a whole bunch of them, ladies and gentlemen. It's crazy. I've got Michael Bridges going. I've got I even had a League of Legends player. I think that's what it is. League of Legends, LOL. It's like League of Legends. I don't know. I'm not a gaming guru when it comes to that sort of stuff, but there are even props for that. So even if you're an e-gamer kind of guy, there's picks for you. Go to prizepicks.com. Use that promo code. Start making some money like I am. All right. And that's going to be it for this show, guys. I really appreciate you guys being here with us. And for anybody who's listening, make sure that you tune in tomorrow. My show airs at 5 a.m. live, but it's still going to be there throughout the rest of the day. So if you're an early bird and you need something to listen to on the drive to work, make sure you tune in because I'll be there for you. All right. With that said, we will see you all next time.